Hi guys, and welcome to another video. We are going to be painting the birth month flower for May, which is the lily of the valley. So you can download your printable lily of the valley outline in the description below if you want to follow along. Otherwise, you can go onto unsplash.com and look up some lilies and start sketching them out in pencil like I'm doing here. So that's really what I do. I go to a stock photography website and I sketch them out. And then I'll go over it with my micron pen, which there are a few different sizes. I believe I'm using the smallest size here, but this is where I'm going to define the outline of what I've sketched out. And all the supplies that I'm using, I'm going to link below. But this is where you can kind of take your time and sketch out what you like and what you don't like, you can leave out, and really define those edges. So I'm going to speed it up here so that you don't have to watch me sketch out everything, but really take your, and once you have the outline, you're just going to erase the pencil underneath. So use an eraser and get rid of all that pencil, and then get rid of all those eraser bits. You don't want that mixing in with the paint. So I use a brush and I sort of shake out the page if I need to, and then I'm going to go into my paint. I'm going to mix together a green, like a light green, with a yellow, like a lemon yellow. And you could add some white in there, or you can add a little more water, but I am going to use this for the buds and the entirety of the stem. So use the tip of your brush here, or a smaller brush if you need, and just sort of get inside those lines as if this were a coloring book, and just use an even layer of that greenish yellow that we mixed up. It doesn't have to look exactly like mine. Just try to look at your reference photo and match the color green that you're trying to get. So what I like to do on the stem is I like to add a little bit more pigment. So I'll add a little bit more green or a little less green and add a little more yellow and try to change the hue of the green. And this is going to give you more of a realistic look, because in nature, nothing is going to be just one solid color. So I'm mixing up a darker green here. I'm going to add that onto the stem, and we are going to just continue to do this the whole way through. So this darker towards the leaves, and just really try to stay in those lines. So what I've done here is just adding a darker green on the base, and it's as if there's more light at the top with a lighter green. So you are going to need to mix colors for this. And you're just gonna follow along and just paint in the lines. And it's really nice when the different greens meet because they sort of blend. You see in the middle there, the greens sort of blended together. Then I'm going to use the flat of my brush, the belly of my brush, and press it flat and sort of just pull that water through the entire leaf and just try to keep it within the lines. If you don't, it's okay, because at the end we're gonna sort of go over those lines again. I'm just gonna repeat that process on this side, and you see that's a little bit of a lighter green, so we can go back in and add more darkness to it if we want, which we will once we add the lines of the leaves. But it's nice to see like the way that the watercolor meets. So here I'm adding a little bit more of a darker green, and then as it hits that lighter color, it does a nice little blend. So we're just going to repeat that process until you're happy with how it looks. And if you want, you can leave it one solid color. At the tips of the leaves, I'm adding a little bit more of a darker shade of green that we mixed up, and I'm sort of just blending that into the middle. So it's a little bit lighter in the middle and darker at the stem and the tip of the leaf. Now here I mixed up a little bit of yellow with white and a tinge of green, like a little tinge of green for the flowers. And you're just going to do the same thing, fill in those lines of the flowers like a coloring book. And if you notice, I did leave out the little stems of green, and you'll see why now. I like that bleed. In nature, if you look at these, there is a little bit of green at the top of the flower, and it's just blends so beautifully with the flower itself. So I left the stems out, and I just tap for that bleed. And we're gonna repeat that the entire way. You can do a less of a tap if you want, or more of a tap. It's really up to you, because this is your lily of the valley. So I'm just touching up spots that have dried a little more, adding a little more interest, adding a little bit more shadow and depth, adding lines in with the green to give it that more of a realistic look. And here I am, just going back again, tapping. You're really going to do this with each of the flowers. And it's something that you can't really control, and it might dry darker, it might dry lighter, and that is the beauty of watercolor. It's so beautiful. It's something that you really can't mimic. If you can try, but it's always going to be its own unique blend. So that is why I just let it do its thing, and once it's dry, you can always go over it again. So I'm using my round brush again, and I am just simply going over it, adding a little bit more shadow, a little bit more depth. You don't have to do this. You can just skip on to the next part, which is adding the details. So right now I'm working a little bit more loosely, and I'm sort of just mapping out where I want to put the details. You can skip this part because you are going to use a thinner brush to map out the details after. I just sort of like to add as much variation as I can. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm adding a little bit more bleeds, a little bit more shadows, mapping out where I'm going to put the lines. And then once it dries, I'm going to go over it with a thinner brush, and I'm going to really go in with the details. So here it's dried a bit, and I'm drawing that straight line. It's not really straight, it's curved, but I'm drawing it from the base of the leaf all the way to the tip, and then I'm adding these little lines that you will normally see in a leaf. So yeah, just go in and just keep doing that until you're happy. You can add them spaced out more or less spaced out. Honestly, this is your painting. So here I am kind of just outlining it a bit, knowing that I'm going outside the lines a bit, but I am going to go over that again with the micron, so feel free to be a little bit messy. Repeating that step on this sleeve. Same thing, just use that tip of the brush and just keep going over it until you're happy with what you have. I'm going over this on this side, even though it's not really making much of a difference, but you can see that subtle change. And then I'm going to sort of blend out over this because I feel like I added a little bit too. And now for the fun part, you're going to use some white, either watercolor or gouache, and a skinny number 4 brush, and you're going to add some white details now that the flowers have dried, and the white's really going to pop on top. So you see zoomed in there are a little bit of mistakes and bleeding, but that's fine. We're going to cover that up with this white gouache. But yep, I like to add it to the tips and then draw these little lines in the flowers just to make them look like they have some texture. And I'm going to do this to all of my flowers. I'm just going to add little lines, and it doesn't have to be perfect, but it's going to pull out some highlights, and it just makes it look more complete and it's more visually appealing. It looks really great on the buds here. And so I'm going to do that also on all of the leaves. And now you see where I feel like I put like too much pigment. Now this is really pulling out some highlights. So it's sort of like erasing that mistake that I made. And I'm going to do that on this leaf too. Sorry, it's a little blurry. Now once everything is dry, you are going to go back in with your micron and you are going to outline. So this sort of fixes any mistakes that you might have made, or if you went outside the lines, or if there's paint on the lines. So it gives it that really defined look. You don't have to do this step, but I just like the way it looks when it's all outlined and defined, and I just like it. So I'm gonna go in, make little tiny lines for that illusion of shadows. I'm going to go back into the leaves and add some lines until I am happy with the way it looks, and you can add as little or as much detail as you'd like, but that's it. So there you have it. With just a few colors of paint and the free downloadable sketch in my description, you can paint this flower for yourself. And I also have this free download for a piece that I made featuring all of the birth month flowers. You can find that in the description below as well. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and be sure to subscribe because I will be uploading a new birth month flower for each month. So let me know what your birth month flower is in the comments below.